Here we are, our 10th installment of this series. Man oh man, we have experimented with a lot of things seen all over Hyrule. And today we are back once again to test some myths. Because no matter how many videos I do, all of you in the comments come up with new stuff each time. Really, I can barely keep up. That's how many are coming in. But for today's episode, I got some good ones. We will test the Gerudo guards, play around with bokoblins some more, and we will see if you can actually survive a fall from a sky island. So without further ado, let's look into these to see which ones are real and which ones are fake. But first, Raid Shadow Legends, today's sponsor. This is one of the biggest and most exciting mobile and PC games out there, and it's totally free. But don't let this fool you, it has a lot to offer. There are more than 700 unique champions, which can be used for different strategies and teams to complete the most difficult challenges such as dungeons, bosses, or PvP arenas. And you will never get bored, or well, it's hard at least, because new stuff is added all the time, like champions. For example, you can get the free legendary champion Sun Wukong, the mischievous Monkey King. All you gotta do is log into Raid on 7 different days between August 22nd and October 23rd to get your hands on this awesome champion. And you can also get your hands on Stag Knight, one of the best epic champions around, as well as a skin for Stag Knight designed by JonTron. Just use the promo code JTSkin before October 7th. It's that easy. So with all of this exciting stuff and more coming soon, why aren't you playing yet, you silly? I mean, new players who use my link or scan the QR code right here get a free starter pack where you get 200,000 silver, 4 energy refills, 1 epic skill tome, 1 day XP booster, and the epic champion known as Knight Errant. Just hit my link in the description, pass the tutorial, and I'll see you on the battlefield. And each accomplished tutorial helps me to boost the content quality for you to enjoy it more. But now that you know that, let's get back into the video. Number 15. Now we all know that the world of Hyrule is a dangerous place, filled with all kinds of horrifying monsters that will hurt you. And one of those is the bokoblin, a minion of Ganondorf that's kind of goofy, but they can also be deadly. But compared to Breath of the Wild, which was the previous game, they got some new tricks this time around. Some of them will be walking around with some sort of makeshift backpack, and they will often fill these with stuff like bomb flowers. And when you walk by, they will start throwing or shooting these at you, which can be very effective. But one viewer in the comments, known as Fishafish, asked me if you can fill their backpacks yourself as well, replacing the bomb flowers with splash fruits, for example. And personally, I thought this was an interesting question, so I had to test it. And so I found this guy, the perfect bokoblin for this little experiment. And to make it all easier, I froze him for a bit so I could empty his backpack. But when I tried to put other stuff into it, I noticed that this wasn't possible. Everything would just fall through. It was almost like the bokoblin and its backpack weren't the solid matter. Anything that touches it will just go through it like it's a ghost. So sadly enough, this isn't possible. And really, I tried this a lot before finally giving up, which means that this claim is false. Number 14. Now the next myth on the chopping block involves a boomerang, because of course it does. This is a curse I cannot escape from. But this is an interesting one, because if it's true, then it would be one of the best weapon combinations in the entire game. User Merci3Ls asked me, if you attach a Korok leaf to a boomerang, will it create a whirlwind when thrown? Well, this is a good question, because if it does, then it could be great for crowd control. I mean, it would be similar to the Gale boomerang from Twilight Princess after all. But is this the case? Well, after cutting down 1,000,000 trees to get 1 Korok leaf, I got myself a boomerang and put it to the test. And the results were, I guess, mixed? Because when I tried to throw it, the boomerang did create a strong gust of air, but it couldn't fly or anything. So it doesn't create a whirlwind or something like that, but it would knock enemies down. However, the same could be achieved with any weapon really. So in the end, this is false. Sort of. It doesn't do what you would want at least. Number 13. In the past, we have experimented with attaching keys eyeballs to different items, because when you put it on an arrow, it will have an interesting effect. It's like a homing device that makes sure you hit your enemy no matter what, and it's always a headshot as well. But what happens if you attach it to a spear? Those fly straight and are kind of made for throwing after all. This is what Mr. Man asked me in the comments, and so I had to give it a shot to finally find out whether these things are only useful on arrows. And so I put an ice keys eye on this fishing spear and threw it in the direction of this bokoblin. But no matter how much I tried, the spear wouldn't hit the bokoblin or change direction in any way. So clearly it doesn't work. Really, keys eyes only work on arrows and nothing else really, which is a bit disappointing to be honest. Number 12. Now this next one was a bit of a weird claim, but hey, I'm here to try the oddest stuff that people come up with after all. So you know what? I will try to combine Sidon Shield with RIJU'S Lightning to see if it does more damage, even though it doesn't make any sense at all, because the two aren't related or interact with each other in the slightest. But this is just my opinion, because Shadowplays thinks that this will actually work in the game. And so I went to this Hinox to see if normal electricity would do less damage compared to doing this with Sidon Shield on, and as expected I found out that this doesn't change anything. The Hinox took the same amount of damage from a lightning strike, so yeah, this one is false. But I did see that Sidon Shield will actually block a hit completely, which I didn't know, so that's a cool little detail that's useful in game. Number 11. This next myth was an interesting one, and if it's real, it's something I've seen a million times but never really noticed. Because you know, I'm an idiot with very little spatial awareness. Now user Phantom said, we all know that when you fuse a key's eye to an arrow, it will target enemies. But did you know that when aiming, the eye will pulse depending on whether Link is aiming towards an enemy? Now this is something I had never seen, or at least noticed, and so I found some enemies and put this to the test, and very quickly I could see that this is actually real, which is a fun little detail that I had never seen before. As soon as I aim anywhere close to an enemy, it will glow and pulse, but when I aim at nothing, it won't do this. This was most likely put in a game so that people could see whether the arrow was targeting anything or nothing. So yeah, this claim is true. Number 10. One of the best new things in Tears of the Kingdom is building. You can make almost anything with Zonai devices after all, but as you can imagine, Nintendo had to do something to limit players. Otherwise, they could do stuff that would break the game, even though they can already kind of do that. And so that's why they had to add the whole battery mechanic. This way you can't use Zonai devices forever. But of course, players have been looking for ways to cheat the system, and this next myth is another one that tries to solve this issue. According to PvP, you can recharge your battery if you talk to a Korok, but only if you already delivered him to his friend. Now after reading this, I decided to test all of it, and so I started with a Korok that was still lost. But I saw that they do absolutely nothing. They won't recharge your battery whatsoever, and so they are quite useless. And when I did the same with a Korok who was already delivered to his friend, I found out that it instantly recharges your batteries, like all of them. So that was quite useful and showed that this claim was actually real. But there's one problem with all of this. You can't take that Korok with you anywhere. So really it's a fun little secret, but ultimately it isn't useful. Sadly enough, you can't take them with you and go into the sky with a flying machine and use them as a way to recharge. And another problem is that they also despawn rather quickly. As soon as you reload the game, the camp is empty. So while I like this one, it isn't necessarily useful. Number 9. Adding items on the tip of an arrow can change a battle instantly. With them, you could win, but not all the arrow combos out there are useful. Actually, most of them are quite useless, to be honest. But one thing that I hadn't tried so far was adding a Hylian Pinecone to an arrow to see what it would do. But luckily enough, Pog in the comment section suggested that I should try this because he wanted to see if it would create a fire arrow if you light it. And so, outside of Lookout Landing, I made a fire and stuck my Pinecone arrow in in the flames. Now immediately it exploded and the fire roared, damaging me in the process. But it did lead to a fire arrow, so we got the result that we wanted, even though you can also get a fire arrow by putting a normal one in flames, so it was a bit useless. But still, it was cool to see that it still led to a fire explosion, and I bet it would be very useful when enemies are sitting around a campfire, because you can set them all on fire in one hit. Number 8. In one of the previous videos, I experimented with plushies, which can actually be found in Gerudo Town. That's because Ryu actually has a couple of sand seal plushies in her bedroom, which can be picked up and fused to weapons. But according to Bulliat, if you bring the right plushie to Ryu, she will say Patricia, which is probably the name of that plushie. However, does this really happen? Well, I actually brought her all the plushies one by one, but each time I was disappointed. She didn't react whatsoever, and kept talking about some side quest that I didn't care about at all. Heck, some of the times she even didn't look at them. So really, she doesn't care and has other things on her mind. Now, it might be that I messed up due to this side quest, but as far as I can see, this doesn't work. So yeah, this claim is false, I guess. Number 7. One thing that I found quite funny to do in these videos is messing around with enemies like bokoblins, and luckily enough, all of you supply me with enough things to test on them or with them. And now we are going to look at another one. Stupid Lemmy Gamer said that Zora weapons would do double damage when Link is wet. Now, I had never heard of this, but it does make sense, I guess. But he wanted me to find out if the same would happen with an enemy, and so I decided to try this. I came across this silver bokoblin, disarmed him, and gave him a Zora spear so he could poke me with it. Now, after seeing how much damage he did without water on him, I decided to throw some splash fruits on him. But nothing really changed. The damage was exactly the same. And so I even tried this when there was rainy weather. But nope, still the same damage output. So yeah, as far as I can see, this claim is false. And I don't even know if being wet increases Zora damage at all. Number 6. Now in the game, there are two things that are incredibly strong, the 8-fold long blade and the ancient blade. Both of these can be used to make amazing weapons that would give you a gigantic edge in battle. But what happens if you combine them? Well, this is what Teska wanted me to test. Would the blade last longer instead of disappearing after one hit? Or would the slash be stronger due to it? Well, I decided to test it all, and I noticed that some things work, while others just don't. It's a bit of a mixed bag. When you hit something or an enemy, the ancient blade is used and basically breaks, so that isn't any different. But the air slash is a lot stronger now due to the item that's fused to the weapon, so that does work. In the end, some of these claims are true, while others are false. But still, there are better things to add to this two-handed weapon. Number 5. Boomerangs. We have to experiment more with them, of course! All of you can't get enough of this stuff! So here we are with another boomerang myth. One that has been on the list for a while actually, and it's a good one. Flaming Cobra asked me to try combining a boomerang with a stabilizer, which is an interesting request. Normally, this Zona item can do some physics-breaking stuff, so maybe it would do the same freaky stuff to a boomerang. And so, I went out there and tried it. And the results were a bit disappointing. Nothing special happened. Sure, it doesn't fly well anymore, but many items can create this effect, like a Stone Talus heart. So personally, I was a bit disappointed. So yeah, it was not as glamorous as expected. Number 4. Now this next myth sounded very promising. If this fuse combo really works, then it would be like a nuke arrow. Because user Merci3L said, attaching a cannon to an arrow allows you to fire 3 bomb-like arrows in one. So using a Lionel bow, it would have loads of firepower. But is this real? It doesn't sound like it. But hey, I had never tried putting a cannon on an arrow, so I did it. And it had an interesting effect that I didn't expect. I shot the thing, and when it hit the ground, it exploded. And man, oh man, it was quite the fireball. So yeah, I guess this is like shooting 3 bomb arrows at once. Because its power was quite impressive, and I can only imagine what it would do if I used a Lionel bow. It would be great for taking out enemies like like gloom hands. So yeah, I guess this claim is true, and I never expected the cannon to function like a bomb instead of a cannon. But it does make sense. All the explosives in it just went off at once, creating quite the spectacle. Number 3. Now we all know that in the desert, the Gerudo are king. They know the place well, and if you're nice, they will help you. But weirdly enough, they don't allow men into their capital city, even though you can buy some amazing goodies there. Sure, Link is the exception, but anyone else? Nope. And the Gerudo guards make sure you can't get in. And if you mess with them, they will even hit you. But according to this viewer, who has a bit of a gobbledygook name, you can parry their attacks, which sounded interesting. So yeah, of course I had to try it, and so I went to Gerudo Town with a mission to piss some people off. Now, when I hit this guard, she tried to hit me with her spear, and I was able to successfully parry the attack, although she did hit me again after, which I didn't expect. And so I tried again, and I was able to parry a number of attacks, which was actually quite fun to do. So yeah, this claim is true. It's not really useful or anything, but it works. Number 2. Now in old videos, we have experimented with things that allow you to jump higher. Think of springs, rockets, and bombs. And in the end, these are incredibly useful. But do they have another superpower as well? Could they cancel fall damage completely? Or do you still die a horrible death? Well, this is what Shelby was wondering about, and so I decided to test it. And I tried this by jumping down with all of them. But in the end, none of them could save me. The bomb led to an explosion and death. And the spring, well, that just resulted in death. I mean, it's useful, but there is a limit to its power. Sure, some heights work, but you still take damage. But at some point, it will just be too much. Meanwhile, the rocket isn't really useful because you can't activate it mid-air. So really, you just fall to your death. So, none of these work, which means that this one is false. Number 1. Now this last one is a simple myth. It's all about cooking, and as we all know, food is super important in this game. Really man, I go through loads of food filming all of this stuff. So anything that could make the process faster is just amazing. And Samo had a way to make cooking gloom-resistant food a lot faster. I mean, at some point I will go back down there to test something, and it's also handy for all of you if it's true. So I had to test it pretty well. Now at first I tried this on the surface world, and my testing method was simple. I put a Zonai cooking pot on the ground and made a gloom-resistant food item with it. And then I did the same again, but I put it on gloom. But when I did this, I didn't see a difference. And so I went to the depths and tried it all again. But this didn't work either. So at this point, it was quite clear to me that this just doesn't work. This claim is false, which is quite annoying because stuff like this can really help me with making these videos. But I guess I will get it done without this trick. Now these were all the myths we had for today. Sadly enough, a lot of them were false, but hey, sometimes that happens. But don't forget, leave your ideas below, even if it's for other games, because I want to cover more than just Tears of the Kingdom after all. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to click the like button, the bell button, the subscribe button, the you're going to the carnival button, you were born in Japan button, you have 3 hairs on your left arm button. I don't know, YouTube has a lot of buttons. Click them all and say nice things in the comments, or mean things. I do read the comments though, so do know that I will read what you say, yes. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye now, I gotta do things. I have a very busy day. Bye!